I wanted to see if ChatGPT could create a game all by itself, so I asked it to create Snake. And obviously, I cannot write any code by myself. I started out with asking ChatGPT for a list of all the things I would need to create Snake, and I would be using Python and pygame to create this. It gave me a list of 9 steps, although some of them I can skip, such as step 1, as I have already installed pygame. It also gives an explanation for each step mainly, and here's an image of all the 9 steps. I then asked more specifically for just step 2, which is creating the boilerplate code for pygame. This essentially creates the screen, and it gives comments and also a description at the end, which is pretty useful. I copied the code, and then I pasted it into my editor, and then I ran it, and to no surprise, I got a black screen. Then I asked for step 3, which is actually creating the body of the snake. It then gives me a short piece of code creating the body. The only criticism is that it takes all the code from last time plus the current code it's writing, which is a bit inefficient as it can just write the new piece of code. But regardless, I pasted it into my editor and I found a problem. It says sys.exit, which is a module in Python, but it hasn't even imported sys. So I asked ChatGPT, and it said, "You're right, my apologies," very politely, and imported sys. And now when I run it, we can see the snake, and it works perfectly fine. Then I asked for step 4, which is actually using player input to move the snake. It then writes all the code with player input, and it writes comments once again, and it gives a good description at the end. I then ran it, but I got an error. The problem was that there wasn't a clock in the game, so I told ChatGPT politely, it says you're right, and it adds the clock to the game, and now it works. So you will need some experience if you want to just use ChatGPT to write. But then regardless, I went on to step 5, which is adding food so that the snake can grow. I pasted it into my code after it was done, and then I ran it, and now it works. There's food on the bottom right, and the snake moves just fine. Adding a clock also allows you to change the FPS of the game. And as you can see, whenever I eat the food, my snake grows longer by 1. So basically it works perfectly fine, but the problem is we can still run through walls and nothing happens. So the next step, step 6, is adding collisions between the snake and the wall and between the snake and its body. So I once again asked ChatGPT, it starts spitting out all the code, and I copy the code, and then I paste it back into my editor, and then I run it. And now, theoretically, whenever we hit the wall, the game should just close, as we haven't added anything for resetting. So let's see, we eat a food, now let's crash into the wall, and it crashes, great. Now step 7, which is adding a score counter. Now this I thought was a bit weird, as step 7 should have technically been adding a restart menu, not a score counter. It should have been switched, but it's fine regardless. I run the code, and now we have a score counter on the top left. Again, interestingly, it adds 10 to my score every time I eat. It should technically add only 1. That's fine. You can see whenever we eat food, we get 10. And yeah, now it's time for the next step, which is actually adding a restart button when we die. So I wait for it to create all the code. It's a bit slow, but regardless, it works. This was the code it used to actually restart the game. It used a function and restarted all the positions. So I run the code, and now hopefully whenever we hit a wall, it should restart. Like that, perfect. Although I asked it for a restart button, and right now it just restarts instantly whenever you die. So I wanted to add a button, so I asked ChatGPT, can we add a button? And also I wanted a high score. So I asked for both of them, and it goes again, it gives me all the code. Now, some problems I saw were when I was trying to display the score and the high score, it wasn't able to find a font, so I had to add that manually. As you can see on the top left, the fonts I had to add manually. And there were still some glitches, such as it would only restart the game when your score was 0 for some reason. I had to fix that. So it's still not perfect yet, but as you can see now, we ran into the wall. It's a bit slow, but it still restarts only after I hit space. So there it is. That's ChatGPT's version of Snake. So to answer the question, can you create a game with only ChatGPT if you have no experience? Not quite yet, but soon probably.